Okay, today's video will be a little different than my usual format, and I'm dedicating the video to the passing of Rod Coffey, who passed away just a few days ago. Rod Coffey was a good gamer. I met him 5 or 6 years ago at WBC. He joined my Mr. Madison's War tournament, and he won in 2016. I was very glad to see that. Rod was a gentleman and a good gamer. He served his country in Iraq, and he will be sorely missed by the gaming community. So the game I'm reviewing today, I'm reviewing for a particular purpose. It's a game I've always wanted to do. It's Avalon Hill's 1776. This was one of my favorite games for decades, and the reason I'm doing this video today is it was Rod Coffey's favorite game. And Rod always wanted to get this game back on the schedule at WBC as a regular tournament, something we never really succeeded in. So Rod, this video is dedicated to you. Now the game came out in 1975, 1 year before the bicentennial of the American Revolution. I certainly remember that year well because I traveled to a lot of the battlefields that year. Now this is not going to be an unboxing video. I'll just take the components out, I'll show you the board, the pieces, tell you a little bit about this fascinating game. Now we played this game so much in '75 that I actually wore out the counters. So I've actually got a spare set of counters and another set that we play with now. And there's your terrain effects chart. I'm going to show you the board because it's got a beautiful board. And one of the best boards I've seen covering the American Revolution. Well, let's take it section by section, and I'll tell you a little bit about the game itself and some of the scenarios and the campaign game. Now, the board is extremely detailed, and I'm a resident of Canada, so I'll show you the Canadian front first, and we'll follow some of the historic areas of the campaign. So there you've got the St. Lawrence, shown as a Class 3 quite wide river. The St. Lawrence where it thins out to a Class 2 river, and then you've got smaller rivers like the Chaudière with a skinny depiction. Each of the rivers has different moving costs, of course. The fortress city of Quebec is depicted, Trois-Rivières, where there was a rearguard action, and of course the city of Montreal. Saint-Jean, St. John's in the game, on the Richelieu was important in the 1775 campaign, and of course you've got Lake Champlain, with the very important Ticonderoga, Lake George, Skenesborough, Mount Independence. They also show quite accurately the gap between the end of Lake George and the beginning of the Hudson. This is only 1 hex long. That represents about 30 miles that Burgoyne's army had to cross to get to the Hudson. The city of Albany will go down the Hudson, in Fort Constitution, West Point, and of course New York City, Long Island Sound. Of course the Boston front, Cambridge, Worcester, the Connecticut River. It's a very, very well depicted map of the Revolution. Delaware Bay, into the south now, Alexandria. Again, your rivers, the Potomac going into the interior of the country, and the more wide open plains of the south. The barrier of the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Allegheny. Now I'll back up a little bit, and you'll see that the depiction of the terrain is long and skinny depiction of the whole 13 colonies. It's a very, very detailed map, and I don't think I've seen one as detailed for the Revolution. Like many games that cover this scale, the units are generic strength points, which can be used like change. So the blue are continental units, the green are rebel militia. You've got various auxiliary counters, like heavy artillery. These are bateaux, which I'll explain later. Entrenchments. You've got forts, and these are the French regulars, should they get into the game. Of course, the British have their counterparts with the British regulars in red and Tory militia in orange. I've gotten so used to these colors that when other games don't use the same color scheme, it's a bit disconcerting. So the counters are certainly functional. They're certainly a creature of the 70s. Nothing remarkable about them, just the number and the combat and movement. You do get fleets in it. They've got a decent respect for fleets and fleet movement. And it's quite a good game. Let's show you some other aspects of the game. One of the game's greatest features, in my opinion, was the use of the tactical matrix. Now, combat in this game was in hex. So if you had a situation where, let's say, Gates's Continental Army was here, just north of Albany, simulating the Saratoga campaign, and let's say Burgoyne's army here landed on top of him, combat was in the same hex. So you'd have a standard one-to-one combat. Nothing unusual about that. But with the use of the tactical matrix cards, each player would get a set of these 8 cards with various tactics on them. Frontal assault, reconnaissance force, enfilade left, enfilade right, refuse the left, refuse the right, stand and defend or withdraw. And his opponent would have those same cards. Each would secretly draw the cards, and then you'd cross-hatch the result to see what the modifiers were. So let's say the British chose enfilade right, and the Americans chose reconnaissance and force. You cross-hatch the result, and you get a -1. So then you would do your one-to-one attack, but you would be -1 to the dice. So it was a very simple system, but combat was just great because it could last round after round after round until one player chose to take the withdraw card and end the combat. Now, taking the withdraw card was risky because if you drew the withdraw card and your opponent picked frontal assault, he'd add 3 to his dice in very good chance of destroying your army. If you picked, let's say, enfilade right and the defender picked withdraw, you'd cross-hatch, you'd be in the red here. The battle would last that round and then end. So there was a whole sub-game within the strategic game of what happened in each hex. It was one of the really, really innovative things for 1775. I don't recall too many games in that period having it, although I think the SPI 1812 did use similar matrix results. Now I should point out that this game was certainly just a military look at the Revolution. There are no political events in it. You must remember that this was designed long before the CGG games came out. So you've got an area that covers from Georgia all the way to Canada, and it is the military conflict that is important here. In order to win the game, the British really had to suppress and control 20 towns all across the board. That's these towns with the star. So it's a military situation totally. You're not looking at the political, and those are abstract into the game. Now this is what made the game kind of out of date for me after a while. When Mark Herman's For the People came out, I tried it, and it gave me a new look at the Revolution by having political events and things that affected the onboard combat. So I tended to play For the People more than 1776. And when Mark redid For the People with his Washington's War, I ported over to that. But in time, I became a little bit disillusioned with Washington's War itself. Washington's War is a tremendous game. It's a very good game. But now that I think about it and learn more about the Revolution, I see now that it's really just a game. It's not a good representation of the military situation of the Revolution. The units in that game can move too far, too fast, and they move in ways that are completely ahistorical, in my opinion. I think this one was much better for showing the military situation of the American Revolution. Now, what is missing from this game? Well, it doesn't have leadership, so you don't get Clinton, Burgoyne, Cornwallis, Howe, Washington, Greene. There are no commanders in this game. which by today's standards makes the game a little dry. What we really need is another game on the American Revolution, and I'd like to see a new game on the Revolution fashioned closer to this, but still have the political events in it. So that was the campaign game. The British had to conquer 20 towns. And they had, when did this game start? Yes, it started in January of 76. So it begins with the Arnold's army besieging Quebec already. And we go into 77, 78, 79, and 80. Now they had a different mechanism for triggering the French. The SPI version of the American Revolution took the view that the colonists had to score a major victory or two before the French would enter the conflict. Avalon Hill took a different stance on it. Their view was that the French were coming at some time. Some point they were coming in. And in this version of the game, the American player starts rolling for the French in the spring of 1778. And depending on the military situation on the ground, the French will either get in early or late, but they are coming in. And once the French come in, with the use of their fleets, the whole game changes. It's quite a good military situation of the Revolution. Another really brilliant concept was this chart for raising new militia. And it was well thought out, and I thought it was very, very good. True, we didn't have named historical regiments. That would have made the order of battle pretty unwieldy. But depending on the situation on the ground, you would either get more Continentals and less militia, or vice versa. In essence, if the British controlled an area, the Continental would be low, and the militia would be low also. Now, if the British had a presence in there, but not control, they'd get kind of maximum Continentals and not the best number of Tories. So this little matrix changed depending on the situation on the ground here, which I thought was really, really good. The game had supply in it. Supply was very important. You've got these little supply wagons that could be created in areas where there was no British. They got so many per year. The British also were on a tight schedule in that they got historical reinforcements. And if you study the chart, you'll see that the British surge really is in 1776 when the bulk of their forces come in. After that, very few British forces came to America. They got about 2 factors every spring. So the British, like the Japanese in World War II, have to pretty well win the revolution with the army that they bring to America in 76, 77. And that way I thought it mirrored the situation very well. For those of you who didn't have time to play the whole campaign game, and the campaign game did take a while to play, they did include 4 scenarios. They had the invasion of Canada, 1775, and these could be played in less than 2 hours. They had the Saratoga campaign, 1777. They had Greene's Southern Campaign, 1780, and of course, Yorktown Campaign, 1781. The rule booklet. Well, it was very comprehensive. This is the 2nd edition. There was 31 pages, but a good portion of that was the player's notes, which are very good, by the way. The designer's notes gives you the scale and how Randy designed the game. So we're only talking about 21 pages of rules, and they were very clear. I don't see too many questions about this game on Consim these days. It is a dated game by today's standards, but it is still a very good one. Now I'm going to wrap up the video with a few comments on American Revolution games in general. I've played a lot of them, most of them. A lot of them I like for various reasons or another. I'm working on my own American Revolution game now. It's been an on and off project for several years. I started off with a CDG game, then I left that and went to a point-to-point game. Now I'm considering doing a hex game again. I'm just not sure. I just know that for me, the definitive game on the American Revolution still is not out there. I know there's lots of fans of Liberty or Death, the coin game. I'm not a fan of that game. I'm not a fan of the coin series. I don't think it fits the Revolution at all. And though it might be a good game, I don't think it's a good simulation. So I'm sort of coming around back to this thing again. I certainly would like to see another game on the American Revolution where it would combine some of the CGG stuff that's in Washington's War, give us the military situation here, and get leadership back into it. So it's an ongoing project for me, and I'm heavily influenced by 1776. So that's all I wanted to say about the game. I know Rod thought it was one of his favorite games on the Revolution. You know, and maybe I'm coming around to that too, that it's still my favorite game on the Revolution, as dated as it is. So we're still waiting for that definitive American Revolution game that we all want. Mark Miklos, who designed the very successful American Revolution Battle Series, we've talked about this, and we still are looking for that pie-in-the-sky American Revolution game out there. So for those of you who have not played 1776, if you ever do pick up a copy, I don't think you'll be sorry. It's quite a good game. Thank you for watching.